Welcome to Dwell on These Things, a podcast of Dwell Community Church in Columbus, Ohio, where we discuss whatever is honorable, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent, and praiseworthy.
We want to welcome Yoka. We want to learn more about the Fountain of Hope, and we want to welcome you to this podcast. Thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
Yoka is a country advisor for the Fountain of Hope in Cambodia. So Yoka, tell us a little bit about how Cambodia happened for you. What did it look like for you to even decide to go to Cambodia in the first place?
Well, I give you the short version. I grew up in a non-Christian family, but was in a church one day, counting stained glass windows. I was 5 and thinking, in my heart, when I'm big, I want to tell people about God. I didn't know who God was. The only idea I had of a God was like an old person with a beard, with longer hair. When I would do good, he would kind of pet me, and always with a stick. So when I was 15, I became actually Christian. Later on, when I was 17 or something, I was doing my nursing school, went on an outreach with Youth as a Mission to Italy. And I was in Rome, and we did outreaches with drama and talking with people. And it was very nice, but nobody became Christian. So I was kind of discouraged. And I talked with one of the leaders, and she said to me, let's pray for this specifically tonight. So we did that. And that evening, a couple that was on honeymoon gave their life to Christ. And I said, yes, this is it. So I started praying. And while I was doing that, this thought, what I had as a small girl, when I'm big, I'm going to tell people about God, came back to me. So I started to pray, okay, God, where do you want me to go? And I talked with some people, and up came Singapore. So I thought I was going to the jungle. And I did a school with YWAM, Discipleship Training School in Singapore. And I came on the airport there, and I thought, is this the jungle? It was more developed than the Netherlands. So the good thing was, it was preparation time. I did the Discipleship Training School and did the Bible School, and I led teams on outreaches in Southeast Asia. And I met somebody, and he said, Yoka, you're so good with kids. Why don't you go to Cambodia? But the little I knew from Cambodia was not good because it was in war, and it was the poverty. And I was still very young, and I thought, if I'm going to Cambodia, I go with teeth, and I come out without teeth. And I go with my hair like this, and I come back with in a bun. So I thought, So I kept on praying. I liked Indonesia. Indonesia, the music. The language is pretty easy for a Dutch person. And Thailand I loved. So I went to a film festival, and they showed a movie, Page Blanche. And it's a French movie about a Cambodian family that has been separated during Pol Pot regime. And I felt like the screen was talking to me like, are you willing to bring a hope to those people? And I yes. But after a week or so, I thought it was coincident. But whatever I picked up, whether it was a magazine or it was all Cambodia. And then I got a call from Thailand saying, Yoka, we need you. Because in that time I was a nurse. And they knew me because of the trips I made. So we'd like to talk to you. I said, well, it's good because I'm taking a group to Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia, and we can meet up. And I thought, we meet up first day because I want to know where I'm going. And I thought it was going to be Thailand. So I met up with them, and so they said, oh yeah, you're a nurse and we need you. And said, so who will I be working with if I decide to do this? And said, in a refugee camp with the Cambodians. So then I couldn't do anything else than just deciding I'm going. So I worked in the refugee camp, Site 2, with YWAM also.
Wow.
And there I really fell in love with the Cambodians. And that was kind of unique because what happened there, the corruption, and that was not easy. But that's why I knew the love I had was from God. I did a school of frontier missions, and it is about cross-cultural living and church planting. And it was focused for me on Cambodia, and that's how I got into Cambodia. Initially with YWAM, but later I was asked to work with World Relief to set up a program. And that is actually the beginning of the Hope Ministries. The Hope Ministry started from the beginning of 1990 till 2013. I was with World Relief, an international organization, and set up the whole ministry. In 2014, we started a local organization, Fountain of Hope, but actually doing the same as what we did in the international organization, except it is with local leadership and sustainable.
Now let's talk about Fountain of Hope, because that's currently your job as a country advisor, and this is a ministry that has been serving the country for many years. How would you phrase the main mission?
Well, the mission is to equip and empower people to be agents of holistic transformation. It's a mouthful, especially for a Dutchie, but the words, they live for me, because for me it's not a sentence. It's if you talk about people, it's the Cambodian, the local people. The local people are the people that bring change in their own country. Like before, when I was there as an Western white person or a barang, they would love listening to you, but more as entertainment. Well, if you are a local, they take it as truth. So the goal is really to equip and empower the locals so they will actually teach, equip, and empower other locals. So holistic is more like, if you look at the example of Jesus, he didn't only come to say, be saved, but he was interested in the person as a whole. If they become Christian but they're still hungry, or if they're still sick, or if they, lost their integrity or identity because of what is being robbed in poverty, so that is like, we want to reach out to the person as a whole. So we started with our children ministry in the middle of the village. We would set up a curtain, and then we had puppets, and we did drama, sing songs. Children would just gather around, and sometimes 200, 300 children, and adults would watch. And children were excited. They had a change in lifestyle. I mean, especially in the time that I began, 1 out of 10 children died before the age of 5. Very simple diseases. So our mission was also to cut that back and educate them in very simple hygienic practices. And then we also shared the gospel with them, and it created a way. So we would play the prodigal son or the good Samaritan. Adults were watching, and they started asking questions. So that is how actually the cell church came to birth.
Sure.
And we start meeting in houses. For the Cambodians, it's hard to go into a church building. Cambodia is a Buddhist and animist country, so very much on worshiping ancestors. So they would feel that they're betraying their forefathers if they would go into a church building.
Right.
So that's why we are firmly believing the church is people and it's not a building.
Right.
So we would get together under someone's house or in someone's house, wherever, on whatever day, it doesn't matter. And people would just join. And it's basically the principle in Acts 2, where it says what a church is really about in Acts 2, 41 to 43. Getting together, fellowship, breaking the bread, worshiping. And that is really what we wanted to do as the cell church. And it is, we multiply the cell churches, like if the more people would come and the cell church will grow, like if they reach like 15 to 20 people, split up. But in order to split up and grow the cell churches, you need to make sure that you have also leaders. Otherwise, you get a burnout.
Right.
So we will do leadership training to the locals also, and give them little by little responsibilities so they will take over the cell churches. Well, most of the people we work with are people who live under the poverty rate, have had little schooling, so it takes a while, but it has been very good, and we've had lots of leadership training. So then we had the AIDS epidemic, and lots of people in that time died. It was just horrible. They were stigmatized. They often lay under someone's house, just skeletons and being very sick. And as cell church, we mobilized volunteers to take care of the people living with HIV/AIDS and create awareness in the community so that they were not afraid, I will get AIDS, but just helping them. So in that time, lots of people came to Christ because the question was, why are you doing that? I mean,
Yeah.
they're so sick, and it's disgusting because they had sores and they had diarrhea. And we said, Jesus would do the same for me. So many people came to Christ during that time.
Yeah. Wow.
We started our teenager programs. There's very little to no sex education in Cambodia. So we help them to get their identity, help them in making choices in life. And they also became like a buddy to a child at risk. You can imagine during the time of the AIDS pandemic that a lot of kids became orphan and they were stigmatized. So the buddy became like an older brother or sister to a child at risk and helped them with schoolwork, helped them at home, shared what they had, and also shared the gospel with them, and just being a big brother and sister.
Yeah.
And some of them would say, I never had a big sister, and it makes me so happy. So that was cool.
Yeah.
And then we had what I said earlier, the holistic is they need food. So we had the agricultural part of it, vegetable gardens. Widows, they got a cow bank, and they can take care of it. And when they get a calf, then they can keep it. And mother cow would go to another widow.
Wow.
Goat banks, chicken banks, saving banks. It's all like helping to help themselves.
Yeah.
It is a principle. What I've learned in YWAM is it's better to teach someone to fish than give them a fish. If you give them a fish, they have food for a day. If you teach them to fish, they have food for life.
Yeah.
So, and then we have like support groups for people living with HIV/AIDS or domestic violence. We are with teaching on anti-trafficking. We're getting together with community leaders, whether they're Christians or not, and identify really what is the problem in your community and have them identify it, because if they identify it, they also take ownership. Like if we would say, you need clean water, so we dig a well in your community, we said, okay, that's fine. But when you get back after a period of time, the water is contaminated because the cows and chickens walk around it. And people get even sicker than they were. But if they identify that their poverty is actually the reason of not having clean water because they are sick and they can't work and they need clean water in order to get out of this poverty cycle, then they want to take care of it. And they are owners, and we just teach them. We teach them how to take care of it, how you keep it clean. So lives have been transformed on community level as well.
Yeah. So Found Hope then, rather than functioning as an organization that hands out goods and services and then leaves, it's more focused on training, equipping, empowering local people to be the agents of transformation in their own communities. So it almost seems like when Fountain of Hope enters a new village, a new community, that then there are services that are being provided that really transform the community from within and empowers them to be the agents of change, right?
Right. If you go to Cambodia, you will see there is a temple almost in every village. And the temple has always been the center of the whole village. But Cambodia is also a fear-driven nation. So if I'm sick, it's probably because I've done something in my past life. And they will go to the temple, to a witchcraft doctor, and he might say, bring a pig's head, or bring 5 crates of beer, and that will help you. If you are poor and you can't afford 5 crates of beer or a pig's head, then you're in trouble. And so there's so much fear and there's so much demonic powers that people don't sleep or are really being oppressed. And we know in Cambodia that's reality. In the West, we use our brain too much and we forget that there is a natural realm, but they know it there. So what our heart is that the cell church is being the center in the church, and that all people, including non-Christians, can come to the church, to the cell church, and I mean people that can help them and reach out to them and counsel them and be of support of them. So in our support groups, there's Christians as well as non-Christians, and that is really affecting the whole community.
Yeah.
I had one lady, she had HIV/AIDS, and she was a government worker herself. And she was always a bit arrogant, really, like to the people that were poor or sick. But then she got AIDS herself, and she went through a bad period of time, and she felt poor because she couldn't work. But then Fountain of Hope came into her community, and they were so supportive and so loving and kind that after a while said, if Jesus, your God, makes you so kind, I want that too. And she's a Christian now. And even though she's sick, she's happy and content. And she's looking after her grandchildren. Yeah. And in fact, she learned how to pray. And she was blind and she couldn't hear. She prayed for herself and she could see again. How cool is that? You know?
Yeah, and it seems like there's not just the sharing of the good news of Jesus, which can transform people from the inside out, but there's also a demonstration of his love in real life and practice and kindness and love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Most of our staff have been at the place that the people we minister to are right now. So I think 50% were working on the rice field or were a hire for someone else. Those are the people who did not know whether they had food on the table that same day. And we have trained them and they've become staff and now reaching out the people what they can identify with in their past. They know how to do that. They know what concerns them. They know what gives them fear, but they also know what the answer is.
Well, that's actually a really good segue then. Let's talk about the leadership of the Fount of Hope. What is your perspective on national leadership? Was that always a priority for you to develop that? How are they doing? What does that look like?
Initially, we were an international NGO, and I was leading the program. But a program is only successful if it continues, if that foreigner is not there. Mm-hmm. I was forced to leave because I got sick, and God used that for good. And we have a fantastic, good Cambodian leadership team. I help and support them. I advise them. But they are the one who are implementing the work right now. So we have a leadership team of 8 people, provincial leaders and project leaders. And out of this team are 2 executive directors who represent the organization to the government and to the donors. So we don't know what's happening in the world right now, also not in Cambodia. And Cambodia has been very communist. We don't know what the future held. But we do know, like if there is a sustainable leadership and you make sure that they really have an encounter with Jesus, not behavioral change, but heart change, then the work of God, nobody can stop.
Yeah.
A foreigner, they can set it out of the country, but the people themselves, they will continue. And that is the important part of sustainability, but also local leadership. Beside the fact that I think it is important that we just give value, integrity to the people there, because the fact that they maybe don't speak English or have not been in university doesn't mean that they can't be better leaders even. And I think local leadership is the best. We do have a board with local people, and there's some international people on. And I'm going several times a year to Cambodia to help and support them where needed. But they're doing very well.
It's interesting that not only is the mission to empower local people in the villages or in the communities where you guys are serving, but you yourself has personally dedicated your work to raising up local leaders as well for the organization and getting out of the way, so to speak.
I was young. I was young myself when I started this, and I always like to say I learned by falling and standing up. I had the opportunity to do that. And I think that is what everybody deserves. Sometimes in the West, the standard is so high. If you have not so many papers, you can't do what you're doing. But God gave me that opportunity that I could do what I did without really having the knowledge how to. But God let me, and I fell and I stood up, and that's how I grew. And I think it's the same, like we need to give that opportunity also to Cambodians, allow mistakes and we grow. And I think that is, they're doing great in that.
Yeah, amen. So I wonder then if we could end with, if you could identify one challenge perhaps that the organization is facing today and maybe one thing that you're very excited about.
What I'm really excited about is now living in the Netherlands for a while and how we can get sometimes totally discouraged or complaining about difficulties we are facing, for instance, COVID. Cambodia is a country that went through hardship and they have had many difficulties. So they handle it a lot better and look for opportunities. So COVID was an issue, of course, in Cambodia also. We were not allowed to meet in large crowds, but they took that opportunity to go deeper, one-on-one, so that the roots go deeper. And if they go deeper, you get build stronger leadership. So I think that has been a time, what I'm really excited about, also in the community, that they were able to meet people in smaller groups and they were still growing. And I think also with the whole COVID area, more online opportunities came, like Zoom. We also Zoom. I Zoomed with them. Yeah, sometimes they get broken up, but it's a start. That's fine. That is exciting.
Yeah.
Of course, one challenging thing is like what I said earlier, their education level has been a lot lower. So the next generation, the younger generation, they are doing much better. But for the older generation, the whole fatalistic thinking, like I am poor, I always will be poor, or I'm dumb and I always will be dumb, to break through that, it is always a challenge. Because you can imagine if you have worked on the rice field or you've lived under somebody's house and now you're trained to be a leader, there needs to be a shift in your thinking.
Yeah.
So they have to really learn to believe what God believes about them. I guess, don't we all? But in the whole leadership issue, that is taking us longer than it would.
Yeah.
Here in the West, people grab for leadership. And in Cambodia, we need to really empower them and help them see that they are potential leaders.
Build up their confidence.
That's right.
Well, I was wondering, Yoka, if you could share one example or a story of how the Fountain of Hope has impacted people in Cambodia.
There's something what really spoke to my heart being in the West and hearing all those issues that going around people are arguing about or judging about. And it was about a lady in our community, and she is a mother of 7 or 8 children. Her husband died, and she was in very difficult situations, not sure whether she had food for the day. Also, her children were not able to go to school because they had to work. We can think our part of it like child labor, but what do you do when you have nothing to eat? And the lady had a hard time, and she started to drink rice wine, very cheap, but she became an alcoholic. Being poor, being an alcoholic, children not in school, you can imagine the whole village kind of judged her like who she was. And she felt very little about herself. And then the Fountain of Hope came in the village. And one day they said, oh, can we come to your house? And said, house? Couldn't really call her place where she lived a house. And she said, I don't have anything to eat. And they said, we have our lunch. So they went home with her, shared their lunch with this lady and the kids that were at home. But she kind of expected that they would tell her that she should stop drinking or how bad she was. But they didn't. They just kept coming back and sharing the love of Christ. And she became a Christian. And I think that is really what our task is as Christians, as Fountain of Hope, is really the love that Christ has given us, pass that on. And Christ doesn't judge us, so we shouldn't judge others. And I found that very encouraging. I'm actually very proud that our workers in Fountain of Hope did that by just sharing what they had, not judging, reaching out like Jesus did with Zacchaeus. He went in his house, didn't judge Zacchaeus, but it was his kindness that led Zacchaeus to repentance. And that's like what we want to do in Cambodia as well, and I hope all over the world.
So let's conclude one final question then. Someone watching or listening to this may wonder, wow, Fountain of Hope sounds like they're doing a lot of good in the nation of Cambodia. How can I get involved? How can I help? How can I support what the Fountain of Hope is doing?
I mean, we have a wonderful website for Fountain of Hope, and we have started a foundation here in the States called Friends of Fountain of Hope, and you can become a friend of Fountain of Hope, and it could be by giving, by praying, by sharing what you've learned. And I would say take a look at the website and you see nice opportunities, and you'll be really encouraged and inspired and see it as a privilege to be part of this wonderful ministry.
Well, Yoka, thanks so much for joining us here today, and it was a pleasure to talk with you and learn about the Fountain of Hope.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.